Hello, thanks for joining us for another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Bethany Moore. I'm the Director of Communications at the National Cannabis Industry Association. Today, my guest is Jack Nato. He is a former Boeing aerospace engineer turned cannabis entrepreneur who started a Portland, Oregon-based Luna Technologies, which manufactures cannabis extraction equipment, with his childhood friend, Kyler Buck, in 2016. At the time, most of the equipment available was repurposed from other industries, including breweries and pharmaceuticals. These Frankenstein machines were inefficient, potentially dangerous, and difficult to operate. Jack and Kyler saw a better way. So through their partnership came a fully automated hydrocarbon or butane hash oil, BHO, extraction machine called the Low.
The IO.
The IO. Thank
Yeah.
you. Today, Luna Technologies has more than 50 such machines in operation. Thank you for joining me on the show today, Jack.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Bethany. Glad
You
to be
bet.
here.
So let's start by learning a bit more about you. I think it's very cool that you and your childhood friend started a company together, but what happened before all that? Like, what's your background? What happened prior to you moving into the cannabis space?
Yeah, well, out of high school, I went to college for economics and business, but I was in school during the 2008 financial crisis, and I was planning on going into finance. It just didn't really feel good at that time. In my mind, the financial crisis kind of happened because of the finance industry. I just didn't really want to be a part of it, you know? So I'd always been interested in mechanics. I'd always worked on cars with my dad and my brother. So I applied for a graduate program in mechanical engineering. And I ended up taking, maybe a couple semesters of prereqs. I think I went to like 5 different community colleges really fast, got all the prereqs done, started at the University of Washington the next year, and then finished my degree. I studied a pretty specific area of engineering called composite materials. Like you were saying, I went to work in the aerospace industry. That's just where all the applications for composites are. And I was at Boeing, working at a big company, has a lot of pluses and minuses. I liked it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't exactly maybe what I wanted. And then also, like you brought up, my old friend Kyler, we started chatting, and he just gave me this really unique opportunity. We've been friends for a really long time. After he got out of the Army, he started working at a dispensary. That was maybe back in 2010 or so, just right at the beginning of extracts. And he really just fell in love with extracts. It's truly his passion. And so he left the dispensary and started his own extraction business. And as he was growing his business, he just ran into a lot of problems scaling it because of the equipment that was available. So I left Boeing to go work for him originally. We were trying to improve his equipment, improve the process, make it safer. But then, we looked around the rest of the industry, realized no one was really doing what we were doing in BHO extraction. And so then we started Luna Technologies to design and build the equipment.
Gotcha. Interesting that your friend's a military veteran and came back and got involved in the cannabis industry straight away. Very cool. So as far as getting into the cannabis industry and movement, did you know a lot about it prior to this? What
I,
was that like?
yeah, I knew nothing about it. Kyler is really the cannabis expert. He has been from the beginning. And so he has a passion for cannabis. I came into it from the engineering perspective. When I first visited his extraction back in 2015, I just saw so many opportunities for improvement. And that's really what brought me here. Like, engineering is it's my creative outlet. And there were so many opportunities to be creative because extraction was so new and the technology was so far behind. And so that's really what brought me over to this industry.
Got it. Yeah. I'm sure you've heard of some of the stories of in the early days of cannabis legalization individuals were taking it upon themselves to come up with some kind of home extraction equipment in their garages, or using an old washing machine or
Oh,
something. And
sure.
and
Yeah.
this was resulting in terrible accidents and home fires and
Yeah.
explosions. So uh, definitely the professional side is designed to have a lot more safety, and we do not advise anybody to try to make their own extractions at home without some kind of professional equipment.
Yes, yes, please don't. And it's not just the equipment, it's everything around the equipment. Yeah, you really need a whole ecosystem of safety to do it properly.
You betcha. Also reminds me of when everyone started deep frying their turkeys around Thanksgiving as well, but that's an entirely different topic.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so all right, so you've been running your company for about 6 years now, it seems. So what's the evolution of the company been like over the years? What does your role look like today?
Yeah, we've been growing slowly since 2016. I think that's partly intentional. We've been self-funding the company from the beginning, and we've tried not to grow too quickly just because we don't want to lose focus on what we're doing. We're really focused on making equipment that makes really high quality extracts. That's just what we know best. Right now, we're at about 20 employees, so still fairly small. And, most of my time at this point, it's split halfway between running the business and guiding the engineering side. We built out a pretty strong engineering team, so not necessarily in the day-to-day engineering conversations, but just steering it more or less.
And is Kyler, your partner, still involved in the business on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, he still runs his own extraction business, so if not day to day, I think we probably see him in the office at least once a day, but he bounces back and forth. But he's also very much a part of our all of our long-term planning. He has a unique sense of where the market's going and what types of consumer products are going to be popular in the future. And so then he brings that to us and we figure out how to design equipment around that.
Interesting. So what other so you're creating the BHO. What's the next step for that? Is it just sold directly to the dispensaries, or is it also
Yeah.
made into other forms of consumables?
Yeah. So BHO is really the only extraction method that can make all the types of extracts. So you have tinctures, topicals, basically anything that you're not smoking. And then you have smokable products, which is either concentrates or vape. BHO can do all of that. And so depending on which product you're going to, you might have to do a few hours of post-processing to get to something that's ready to package for the consumer, or you might have to do a couple of days of packaging or post-processing to get to that product.
Gotcha. And as far as your partner, Kyle, who's a military veteran, is he, I'm curious if he's got a passion for military veterans and having access to cannabis for those interested in treating things like pain or PTSD or some of these other very veterans access related issues that are part of the larger conversation of cannabis and patient access.
Yeah, I think we all do at the company. We have a number of veterans at the company from both Army and Navy. And one of the first, I got to think about this, either our first or second customer was veteran owned, and everyone on the extraction side was a vet. And, for me, I know Kyler has passion for it. For me, with that customer, that's where really I saw it firsthand for the first time, where all these guys, for pretty much every single one of them, cannabis was life changing for them when they got out of the Army. And yeah, so I think everyone is it's part of what brings us to work every day.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing all that. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and take a deeper dive into extraction equipment. Stay tuned. We will be right back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
This week on RVER, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
Hey, Chief, we got a damaged RV on its way to the OR.
Well, that sounds like a job for the new head of RV surgery.
Wait, are you promoting me?
Congrats, Martinez.
Doctor, that RV's flatlining.
Well, that sounds like a job for the new head of nursing.
So you're just promoting everyone now?
Yeah, kind of looks that way, doesn't it?
When your RV really needs saving, Progressive has you covered. See if you could save with a leader in RV insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, covered subject to policy terms.
Sometimes you need to take control to make a difference. That's why with FlexPath from Capella University, you're in control. Set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move at a pace that works for you. Discover a different way forward at capella.edu.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio, and we're talking with Jack Nato from Luna Technologies, a cannabis extraction equipment company. Let's jump into some of your values as a company. Extraction equipment is complex and expensive, and some of these machines are huge and have so many components to them. And as I mentioned earlier, they can also, this type of technology or engineering can be dangerous if not used properly. So I'm sure there's some training that these operators of the extraction machines need to go through in order to safely turn them on, make them do what they're supposed to do, and then shut them down safely as well. So safety is an important factor when it comes to this equipment. Let's talk about that aspect.
Yeah. On the training side, I think there is a hierarchy of safety controls in engineering it's kind of universal. And really one of your last defenses against risk is training. You have to train your operators no matter what, but really there should be a number of things that happen before you get to relying on training that should keep everyone safe. And so we really, we come from an engineering background. I come from an engineering background at this company. And so safety is always at the forefront of our mind. And because we bring the engineering background, that's why we look at all the engineering controls that are available, and training is kind of near the bottom. At the top is just removing the risk completely. So you never let anyone be exposed to an unsafe area. But yeah, when I first came into cannabis extraction, I was pretty shocked at the safety level that was in the industry, or kind of the lack thereof. And so we're trying to approach everything from a safety mindset. And it's really, we ingrain it deep into our culture. From the beginning, we intentionally chose to pull all of our technical staff on the engineering and support side from other industries where safety culture is just better developed. So like our director of operations came from semiconductor and pharmaceutical engineering and construction. Our service and support manager was working on process equipment at Intel for 25 plus years. And so beyond bringing all the experience from those other industries, it's really brought a safety mindset to the company that I think was or somewhat is lacking in cannabis extraction. And we did that because, like you're saying, volatile solvent extraction is dangerous. There's inherent risks with using flammable solvents that we need to make high quality extracts. It can be done safely, but you need the proper engineering controls. So yeah, 6 years ago, they didn't really exist. Really, people were relying mostly on training, making sure that operators who were turning all the valves of the equipment, that they turned them at the exact right time, that they were the ones looking at the gauges to make sure the pressures were right, make sure the temperatures were right, to create safe operating conditions. And it's really just not a good way to go about it. Like I was saying, that should be your last line of defense. So yeah, we try to build out all the engineering controls that happened before that. We're the only automated BHO extraction equipment manufacturer. And, of course, from a business standpoint, automation offers a lot of benefits in terms of product quality, consistency, throughput. But on the safety side, it protects the business's people and property. With automation, we can have an extractor running the equipment from either the next room over or from the other side of the building on their phone, and we get them out of the hazardous area. The hazardous area is where the extraction actually happens. And if you remove people from that, you separate them from the risk. And you really just can't do that with the older equipment that's on the market and that was on the market. Lots of it was designed in a garage, and there's nothing wrong with designing something in a garage. And it's how the industry got to where it is. But now we're here and it's time to operate at a more professional and safer level. And that's what we're trying to help our customers do and what we're pushing for.
Yeah, it makes sense. Protect the people and reduce the possibility of human error. Absolutely. Right. So extraction equipment, it's not originally invented just for cannabis, obviously. As we mentioned earlier, breweries and pharmaceuticals. I think of, essential oil extracts or perfume, or maybe imagining a mad scientist in an alchemical laboratory. But what's the brief history of where extraction machines came from before the cannabis industry?
Yeah, for some types of extractions, they were pulled directly from other industries. For example, like CO2 extraction, that equipment just came from similar industries, like you were saying, perfume extractions and things like that. But most connoisseurs want BHO products. I mean, it's really the only way to get the true flavors and aromas of the plant all the way through to the extract. And so on the BHO side, it wasn't a perfect transition from another industry. You just couldn't go out and pull something over and it would work. And then there was nothing on the market that was called cannabis extraction equipment 15 years ago. So yeah, they went to entrepreneurial people, went to other industries, and most of it was pulled from breweries. And in a lot of cases, brewery equipment just doesn't work for higher pressures or the types of solvents that we use. And so yeah, it took a while for the industry to develop. It actually started with open blasting, which was a pretty dangerous method. Then we moved to closed loop extraction, with pulling components from other industries and making them work for cannabis extraction. And then finally, we started designing equipment that was specific to cannabis extraction. And that's what we're getting to now.
Interesting. Well, anything with the word blasting in it definitely sounds like there could be a dangerous component to
right.
it. So moving along, NCIA, your company's been a member of NCIA for a few years. We represent small businesses and medium-sized businesses, or Main Street cannabis. And we have been pushing through complex state regulations in preparing for this, inevitable potential federal legalization. As far as regulations go, what are some of the regulations you're currently dealing with that are giving you the biggest headache, or what improvements would you like to see to these regulations that impact how you operate?
Yeah, I think there's two main areas that affect us. The first is places where volatile extraction or BHO extraction specifically is just banned. And that's because of this stigma around safety. Like we're talking about, all the old legacy equipment was dangerous. There were accidents that left lasting impressions, but it can be done safely, and BHO products are going to be sold no matter what. Most connoisseurs will only consume BHO products. So why push that to an unregulated market? If you're not going to allow it into the regulated market, it's still going to happen. And in addition to all the other myriad of problems that you get with an unregulated cannabis market, you don't solve the original safety problem, because an unregulated cannabis extraction is going to be dangerous than if you do it in a regulated way. So that's one of the biggest hurdles for us. I mean, obviously it hurts us as a business, but also it just hurts everyone by not allowing safe extraction to happen.
Gotcha.
But then, yeah, once you bring it over to the regulated side, you need the proper safety regulations in place. And we're still working on that as an industry. The National Fire Protection Agency, they released some preliminary cannabis code a couple of years ago. That was a huge step forward. and I was on the committee with Underwriters Laboratory to help create code for cannabis extraction equipment, also released a couple of years ago. But, both codes are they're still in their infant form. They still need to be worked through. They still need to be better developed. Really what we need in the industry is more expertise on the engineering side to help push this code forward.
Gotcha. All right, let's take our last commercial break and then come back and wrap up our conversation with Jack from Luna Technologies. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Bethany, and we've been talking with Jack Nadeau from Luna Technologies. And in this last segment here of the show, I do want to talk about some upcoming events. But even though I've been involved in the cannabis industry and movement for 20 years now, I am not sure I know all the different types of extractions, what they are that are out there. Seems like every year there's something new that comes along. The first time I heard of like shatter or, all these different things. So would you help me out and quickly do a brief overview of what types of extraction products are out there now in the year 2022?
Sure, yeah. So I think going from like the most expensive or the most the connoisseur level down, you start with concentrates, which includes, like you're saying, shatter, wax, newer products like sauce and diamonds. Diamonds are like they're a purified form of THCA. Then all of those products are consumed by dabbing. Then you go down a level and you have all the vape products. Vape has come a long way in the last couple of years. Now what's most popular is live resin vapes, where you're trying to pull all the terpenes from the plant. So all those flavors and aromas from the actual plant, so you can taste it, what it tasted or what it should be, how it's grown basically. Then below vape, you have all the edibles, topicals, tinctures, all your non-smokable products. So yeah, that's a very, very brief overview.
Yeah, got it. Thanks for that. And I like the scale of, from the connoisseur down to just
the more accessible.
More accessible, common, absolutely. So as I mentioned, Luna Technologies, your company has been a member of NCIA for a few years, been to our trade shows in the past. Of course, the world kind of changed for a couple of years during the pandemic. So we're all navigating what that looks like going forward. But we are excited to go back to Washington, D.C. For our in-person 10th annual Cannabis Industry Lobby Days. The last time we did this was, I believe, May of 2019. So it has literally been over 3 years since we have done our DC lobbying fly-in event. Usually it's 100 and their staffers all over Capitol Hill. It'll be a little bit different this year due to said COVID-19 pandemic. The congressional offices work a little differently now. And I think it'll be a little bit of a smaller quality over quantity group that flies out as well. But I am thrilled to go back to DC to lobby. Really, my role, of course, is running around with my coworker, Vince, who's the camera guy, and catching NCIA members in and out of these meetings, and doing the storytelling of being a cannabis industry operator, a small business owner, and having a voice at the table with members of Congress who can affect change for us at the federal level, ideally. So we're definitely talking a lot about the legislative movement that we've been seeing lately, both in the House and Senate. Of course, the Safe Banking Act has passed the U.S. House 7 times now. And then we're waiting for the Senate to pick it up and run with it. But that's another story. What was surprising was to see the Senate initiate their own action with the CAOA, the CAOA, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. A discussion draft was introduced last summer. NCIA submitted 40-something pages of feedback to improve the bill. And then recently we saw the bill formally introduced in the Senate. Really exciting. Of course, just because a bill gets introduced, we all know the Schoolhouse Rock, it, does its dance around Capitol Hill. But that's why we're going to DC, to sit at the table, to have those conversations with members of Congress and garner their support. Have you had a chance to go to our Lobby Days event before, Jack?
No, I've never been, but I'm extremely jealous. I wish I could be a fly on the wall for some of those conversations.
We'll get you there next year if it doesn't work out for you to go this year. But any NCIA members that are going, I look forward to seeing you there. There is definitely still time to register and make your plans and book your flights and get your hotel or Airbnb plans finalized. It is a month away. It's September 13th and 14th. 2022 in Washington, D.C. I spent my 20s living and working in DC, and it's kind of like my stomping ground. So just so excited to head back for a couple of days as well.
Yeah. I cannot believe the Safe Banking Act has passed the House 7 times.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. Every time I talk about it, I've been using 5. So, and I thought that was amazing. I just haven't been paying attention enough. Wow.
7, I know. And then, we send it over to the Senate and they're just like, well.
Yep.
All right. Well, it's time for us to wrap up, but where can our listeners find out more about your company?
Yeah, take a look at our website at lunatechequipment.com. We have a pretty thorough resource section that has a number of webinars all about cannabis extraction. And we have a new webinar that we will be doing live August 15th, all about BHO safety.
Perfect timing for that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for being on the show today. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice. Until next time.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.
Progressive is America's #1 motorcycle insurer, so we understand motorcycles. No, really, we have a bike translator.
Okay, so this bike feels like he's capable of a little more than just trips to the convenience store. Oh, also, he wants to let you know that you can buy a gallon of ice cream instead of a pint every time. Those are his words. So he said roughly like, blink the last wheel. It doesn't really translate, but the way he said it was super funny.
Get 24/7 roadside assistance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Roadside assistance subject to policy terms and limits and may require comprehensive coverage.